To welcome you to this public hearing, Town of Stellarton, January the 8th, 2024. Mayor McGilvery has declared a conflict of interest, so he will not be here. I will be filling in for him, Deputy Mayor Susan Campbell. I'd like to call this hearing to order. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that was moved by Gary Pence and seconded by Brian Knight. Motion carried. At this time, we will hear comments and objections in regards to the development agreement for 274 Ford Street and 283 Ford Street in regards to apartments. So, would anybody like to speak? Yes, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I understand that Mr. McGilvery, one of the applicants, is wanting to speak. I just wanted to point out that earlier today I aired when I emailed him to remind him, telling him that the hearing was supposed to be at 5:30. After the CAO corrected me at about 3 o'clock this afternoon, I did email him back, but I don't know whether he got the second email. So I would just suggest that if he gets here a little late, say towards 5:30, that you remain open to letting him speak. That's all, because that was my error. So I apologize for that. Okay, thank you.
Do. Yeah. So, would you like to speak?
If you do, you just have to press the button on the...
No, I just announcing who I am, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm Scott Lieberman, the owner of 274 Ford Street, so I'm certainly in favor of the redevelopment for apartments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, maybe we can deal with that 274.
You're just here to hear anything? You're not making any motions until
No,
council?
Does anyone have any questions for Roland, maybe? Acting Town Planner?
Madam Chair, is this questions now or the questions in the council meeting?
If you have questions now, you could ask of Roland.
You can ask them, it's just there's no motion on the floor.
Okay. Roland? Roland, what does the land use bylaw states about the downtown core for residential, please?
Residential uses as of right are only permitted in the upper levels and beyond the first 30 feet of commercial floor area depth on the main level. If somebody wants to go wholly by a residential use, then they have to go through the development agreement process, which the two applicants are doing right now, the purpose of this hearing.
Roland, just a couple of more questions. When was the land use bylaw put in place? And the other question would be, is this something that is universally agreed to by almost all municipalities, or is this something unique to Stellarton?
This is in the common land use bylaw, so it does apply in all 5 of the towns in Pictou County, including Stellarton. This bylaw was adopted in 2016 by the 5 towns. I guess that would answer your questions directly. I can't speak really as to how the other towns have been addressing it, other than Trenton and Pictou, because they're the only other 2 that I work for. It really hasn't been an issue in either one yet. There haven't been any applications of this kind in Trenton or Pictou, but I can't speak for New Glasgow and Westville.
And my last question is, would you be able to provide us with a background on why this land use bylaw, this specific section, has been put in place, please?
So this was put in place in order to try to preserve the commercial character of the main street. not just to maintain a commercial tax base, but also the look and feel of having commercial viability on the main street. It's certainly a difficult thing right now because since the pandemic, things have changed quite a bit. If this were a few years ago, I would have definitely, recommended against it. Now I have to tell you, I got to be honest, I'm very split on this whole thing because on the one hand, yes, we want to reserve the commercial character of our main street and Ford Street. On the other hand, we are in a housing crisis, and we are also hearing from a lot of commercial property owners that they're having trouble renting and leasing their space, not just here in Stellarton and Pictou County, but really everywhere. I mean, if you look at office vacancy rates in Toronto, Calgary, and other places, even Halifax, they're having difficulty. So, I guess my answer is, like, I'll be honest with you, I'm split on this issue myself. It's a very difficult one, and I understand that, members of council would be as well. But the reason why I was put in place to answer Councillor Lalonde's question was to try to preserve the commercial character of the main street.
So if I can build on that, then the commercial tax base for Stellarton, New Glasgow, any other town in Nova Scotia or in Canada is very important to any town, not only as a stream of revenue, but also to try and lighten the stress and the pressure that it would put on the residential buildings. So losing the commercial tax base will eventually increase our residential tax base. Our residential tax base is at a lower rate, so eventually, in order to keep pace with the inflation that's happening, we will have to increase our if we continue with that trend, and this is a precedent that we are going to create if we were to approve it, that will create some pressure on our budgeting and our expenses in the future and our revenue stream. That's how I look at it myself. I understand that there's a big demand on residential and not as much demand on commercial. Nevertheless, it's ups and downs in business, and as we all know, what's good right now might not be good in the future, and vice versa. I will remind Council that the Planning Advisory Committee has denied the request. I've stated my opinion on the matter. The only way that I would agree to this is if we have an agreement with the potential landlord that this would be on a temporary basis. We can agree to 5, 10, 15 years, whatever council agree, but I will not agree on a permanent basis. At the end of the day, this is a council decision, and I'm just stating my opinion, and I'm hoping that the council will be able to see it from my perspective. Thank you.
Roland, are you aware that there's several of the commercial buildings on the main street that have been turned into apartments?
No, we haven't. I can't say which ones have and which ones haven't. We are aware of one, which is because there was a complaint brought forward. It's the one next to the post office. Civic number escapes me right now, but we will follow up if there are complaints that are lodged.
Yeah, I noticed when you drive down the street, you see curtains in a lot of windows, and some of them have lights shining out in the nighttime. So it appears to me that they haven't asked permission; they've just gone ahead. The other two is Sobeys. You probably don't know where that is. The old Sobeys Homestead. It was an insurance company there across next to the curling rink. So now that was residential. So it's commercial. If somebody wants to put residential in there again, what's going to happen?
I guess a lot would depend on when the residential use was vacated, whether it would have non-conforming use status at this point. If it's been a number of years, then they wouldn't. They would have to, I guess, apply for a development agreement to the same process. But if it was something recently, then yeah, they could be quote-unquote grandfathered in, like the old saying goes, potentially, if they're deemed to be a legal non-conforming use under the Municipal Government Act.
Okay, thank you.
By grandfathered in would be pre 2016, correct?
There are, I don't have the act with me, but there are specific non-conforming use requirements that deal with residential uses as opposed to other uses, and they are a little bit more lax in terms of recognizing residential uses. Usually it's about a year that's given before it's considered to be a change of use. But for residential uses, it's a little bit more flexible in terms of the amount of time and other standards. I could certainly do that for, but I don't have the act with me right in front of me right now.
Thank you.
Roland, it's my understanding that if the council decided that they wanted to make changes to these two dwellings, that's a possibility, right?
Yes, it is, and of course, it would have to be negotiated with the two applicants as well, because at the end of the day, it is a contractual agreement, so all the parties would have to agree. That's correct.
And what about the issue of parking? Is that?
I went to both properties, and both of them have adequate room at the back to accommodate the parking for the two additional apartment units that they're both looking at putting in their respective properties. But so I don't see parking as being a problem.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
Thanks so much, Big 8. A good Stellarton product. Yeah, Mr. Councillor Pence and Councillor Lalonde and Councillor Knight, Ms. Higdon, Councillor Campbell, and Mr. Barrick, good to see you. Yeah, I think the residential, I mean, I too see the vision, and like Roland mentioned him, and am reluctant to convert it to residential because of potentially it having a detrimental effect on the look of the downtown, of the main street, but it's better than a main street that's empty or with illegal conversions. So I think that, like Mr. Lalonde said, Councillor Lalonde, about the tax base, the tax base is also based on the assessment, the assessed value, and if there's a lot of vacancy, you can bring down your assessment quite a bit. So even though the marginal rate might be a little higher in the commercial, you really want a downtown that's aesthetically pleasing and occupied in a legitimate way. So I feel that saying we make more off commercial for the town and it's going to ease the burden on the residents isn't necessarily true if the main street deteriorates and becomes more and more vacant and the property values go down and down. So I think that kind of might ameliorate that concern somewhat. It's a practical issue that I'm not sure what year the bylaw went in place, but there are now, probably the Aberdeen Mall at least was there at the time maybe, but certainly East River Road wasn't developed to the same extent There was no Albion Business Park. I'm not sure if like the industrial park was in place up there. There was certainly no business park in New Glasgow. And all those are new, and all those, and not just the Highland Square Mall, which is, you know, acres of retail that itself is struggling, having to remain filled. But there's also like Walmart, which pulled a lot out of the mall, and Westfall Road. Not to mention there's 5 separate main streets in Pictou, Trenton, New Glasgow, Stellarton, and Westfall. So it's really hard for a population base of 30, 40, maybe 50,000 in Pictou County to support all of those commercial things, areas that are commercial. So MPL is committed to the main street of Stellarton. The dairy building was abandoned and derelict. We bought it from Scottsburn Dairy, partially renovated it, rented it to matched it up to Blue Lobster, like found them as a tenant, and got them to rent it, then eventually sold it to them. So that property was derelict, vacant before we did that. We didn't do it all, of course, on our own, but we were a necessary part of the step. 247 Ford across the street, where the coffee shop and the tax store, that was basically derelict. There was H&R was there. There was the upstairs was vacant, and the basement was honestly full of rats. And so we fixed that up. Now there's like 5 apartments in it that all pay only $625 a month rent, all inclusive. And there's 2 good commercial tenants. The house across from Tim Hortons was a black house that was run down, and we demolished that down to the studs and rebuilt it into 4 apartments. And the property at issue, 283 Ford, was abandoned by Nova Scotia Power and the other tenants, and had a plywood front that was empty. And then we made it into something that it is now. So that's kind of I know that's not the main issue, but certainly the last thing I would, or MPL would want to do, is do anything that has a detrimental effect on the main street. And I just had this little handout here. There you go. Thank you. So the first page just shows the building as it is now, except the sign which we're going to put there. So even though we'll have like, it will be a residential building if it's approved by the council, we'll maintain that commercial heritage at least look. And we, like the windows, we didn't just you see a lot of the local construction where in the day they would round the window. Oh, sorry, yeah. You can see on the front there, they used to round the windows with the masonry work, but a lot of renovations, they just sort of square it off so it's easier to buy the window because it's expensive and problematic and time consuming to get it rounded. But we rounded them all to preserve that historic look. Anywhere that was infilled with plywood by tenants subsequent to the original builder, like in the 70s, they filled everything in with plywood and made small windows. We opened it back up to the way it was originally, where it's all glass between the stone columns. So we really tried to bring it back to the original look. And I do feel we would have a really hard time getting commercial tenants for it. We do have a lot of commercial property, which is really difficult to fill relative to residential where there's a high need. It also fits in with the use, like the ground floor is accessible, and some of the, at least the front two will have accessible bathrooms and all of that. Maybe more than that, I can't remember offhand. But then it's a great place for residential because it's so close to Sobeys, the bank, and the post office. Having it residential doesn't detract from the aesthetics of the downtown at all. I know the concern is like the downtown would be overrun with residential, but it already is, unfortunately. And some of these old buildings don't have many years left that are occupied residential in the basement or on the ground floor. But I just kind of marked them on the map there, and like the properties 1 through, I'm not casting aspersions or making a complaint. I think people are just making do any way they can, which is fair enough. But these are all, it's all apparent to me. Some of them I've seen inside, others I haven't, but it's just unreasonable observation and I wouldn't say investigation, but just observation. It's apparent that they're residentially occupied on the ground floor. It's a lot of places, right? Like number 3, yeah, you guys dealt with that. Like you could see him laying in his bed when you walked by, right? So, fair enough, and some of them, you know, it's not taking away from the look that badly, I have to say. Like number 2, they made an effort, like they put new stone siding on it, and the other one across from the Graham's place, you know, that building was really run down, and I don't know if there was a development agreement taken out. It's certainly, I've been in the front, and there's definitely apartments there, but he has fixed up a lot of rundown buildings, and he did a really good job with that one. I don't know if it's in there. 2, 3, 4. Yeah, page 4. Like that building looks night and day from what it did, but it's all residential on the ground floor. I've been in it, and it doesn't detract from. And like council, I'd be concerned about parking because the main street only has so much capacity, but we have like at least room for 10 spaces in back, and probably more behind this building. And some of these ones don't, but. So I'm not saying like 2 wrongs make a right or anything like that, or I'm just saying of necessity the situation's evolving, and I don't know if that's instructive on your decision at all, but it is nice to see that although they are residential, some of them, most of them are still keeping up a decent look for the downtown. But we all want the same thing. You know, we all want a safe, comfortable, organized community that's aesthetically decent, nice as we can get it, right? And so that's what we're shooting for, and we're all on the same page that way. And
Jamie, how long was that building vacant before you took it over, do you know?
I would say from the point Nova Scotia Power abandoned it, but I'm not sure when that was. I would say at least 5 years.
Quite a while ago.
Yeah, I would say at least 5 years.
So we didn't collect taxes from it then?
I don't know. I think you probably do collect on vacant.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Not as much as,
Well, the value, if they,
yeah.
if you had it vacant with plywood, though, they could have appealed it. They probably
They
didn't.
could appeal
Yeah.
it, but it's based on the assessment of the building.
Yeah.
Yeah. The assessments has gone up, I'm sure, several fold since we renovated it, right?
Yeah, so when you put apartments in it, the assessment will go up again. Like, it would be a different assessment for a building with commercial downstairs and nothing upstairs, like, than it would be with all apartments.
Correct, so this would be changing from commercial to residential.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure how it would impact the dollar value of the assessment, but.
Not greatly.
Jamie, I have to say, the picture is awesome.
Thank you.
You always do great work I've seen most of your, well, I shouldn't say that, but I've seen few of your buildings, and every single one of them have been done very nicely, aesthetically. It adds value and beautification. So this was never a doubt in my mind. But when I make a decision, I always try to look further ahead in the future and see what the ramification of my decision is going to be in the future. As I said earlier, I don't know if you were here or not, but at this point in time, I cannot be insensitive not to understand or realize that there's a residential crisis from a rental perspective, and the demand on commercial might not be as much. But, you know, thinking forward a little bit, 5 years, 10 years from now, things can change, will change. And any decision that we make right now, you know, will have an effect on our future 5, 10 years down the road. The question I have for you would be is, would you be open to having an agreement with the town for 10, 15, or 20 years to switch to residential, and at the end of that, it will be reassessed?
Yeah, absolutely, no problem with that, yeah.
So that would be then up to the council to decide which way they want to go. They might say that they want to give you permission to go residential immediately without that. If the council decided that they would be against that, then the second resolution could be that we ask if you want to have a agreement with the town for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, with 10, 15 years,
Okay.
definitely, yeah, we could revisit it, and if,
Appreciate that. Thank you, Jamie.
yeah.
Madam Chair, you have 3 minutes until council meeting, so not sure if there's anything else to add.
Does anyone else have anything they would like to say?
Hi, Scott Liebman here again. I didn't want to speak really until I kind of heard a few things. Most of you probably don't know me. I'm not local here. I have family here. I live and reside in Halifax, Cole Harbour specifically. I sell real estate. I represent a lot of investors. Obviously, I'm an investor myself. I'm echoing all the same sentiments as Jamie. What's gone on in Halifax is certainly trickled down here. It's really no different across Canada, like Roland mentioned earlier. My thing, obviously, it's an investment for myself and my family, this particular property, but I'm also passionate about it, and I want to, as Jamie said, continue to present a quality product, not only to look at, but for my tenants, that largely is driven by revenue. And when I constantly have commercial spaces vacant, I'm resistant to spend money on my building, because I just don't have it. So what you're seeing in Halifax, long-term property owners that, you know, have vacant commercial spaces are starting to pull back on what they're, you know, reinvesting in their own properties. And that ultimately is just turning into more and more of a slumlord situation. You start to see it. I haven't gone in quite the detail as Jamie has in terms of pictures and whatnot. But if the revenue's not there, then simply reinvesting in the property is stagnant or certainly may not come. For me, it's just a matter of, with full occupancy, I have more revenue at my disposal to then in turn renovate. Certainly the exterior right now is lacking. If you've seen pictures of my building right now, and that's essentially the first focus for myself is once I get fully occupied, because I've only owned this property since 2019, but every single time I've had a commercial space come available, it's been months and months, and in this case years, to try and fill it, where if in fact I happen to have residential occupancy, the feedback I get from prospective tenants relative to the community of available units is, A, obviously there's next to none, and B, what's available is extremely substandard. So for me, it's just a point of 100% occupancy means more revenue, which means more invested in the property, which is just a general better living space for the number of people that need it. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you for your comments, and we will be discussing this in council. Could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So move.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome the Town of Stellarton Council meeting January 8th, 2024, at 5:30 p.m. start time. We're here in the council chambers. The agenda's in front of us. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to add under correspondence from PVSC regarding assessments.
So 6C, the PVSC. Anything further? Can I have a motion to approve, please?
Second.
Moved by Councilor Knight, second by Councilor Pence. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Contrary minded. Most carried unanimously. Thank you. Approval of the minutes next, December 11th, 2023. Is there any errors or omissions?
And I'll second that.
Moved by Councilor Pence, second by Councilor Wan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded. Most carried unanimously. Thank you. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Hearing none, we'll move on to presentation of the service awards. It's always our pleasure each year to do this. We have a strong staff team here at the Town of Stellarton, and we always appreciate recognizing them. First was Chris Sampson.
I know. Just say how many years.
Chris Sampson, 5 years for the Stellarton Police Service. Thank you.
Your Worship, Wait till Chris gets around. Wait till he gets around there. Your Worship, I want to say 5 years ago, I was on the board that hired Chris. We were kind of apprehensive because he was at Cape Breton and we didn't know he was going to fly back home, but he stayed with us. And he does a great job and he's really community minded. Just want to thank him. On Halloween's, he's always out giving out treats to the kids.
Thank you, Councilor Knight. Next is 5 years, Chris McDonald, Public Works. Public Works part is a big part of our town. I want to thank him for his service.
Your Worship, I'd like to say a few things about Chris, if I may. I find, since we hired Chris McDonald on Public Works, I find Chris is quite conscientious about what goes on in town and how it's looked after. And I want to thank you, Chris.
Next 5 years administration, CEO Susan Hinkton.
Thank you very much.
Well, I want to say again, I was proud to be involved when we hired Susan on, and she's done a phenomenal job for us. Thank you.
Council is unanimous agreement amongst council. Thank you, Susan, for your 5 years. 15 years, Sergeant Chris Irvin. Wow. Once you get to 15 years, you actually get a gift.
Chris was here when I got on council, and he's done a great job.
Thank you, Chris. In 20 years, the most of the bunch, Constable Nancy Kay. Nancy's part of the Stellarton Police Service and currently with the Integrated Street Crime Unit. Thank you, Nancy.
I just want to say, Your Worship, that Nancy looks too young to have 20 years in the service.
I agree.
Yeah. So Nancy, time flies because I remember being up to your 15-year ward in Halifax. That's 5 years will fly fast, Nancy. Thank you for your long-term service.
Thank you, Councillor Knight, and we'll move on to, thank you all for your, thank you all for being part of, thank you all for being part of the staff team. We appreciate your service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is number 5, reports from staff. 5A is Chief Mark Hobeck, Stellarton Police Service. We had the Police Commission meeting last Thursday. Went through the report. Is there any questions in the report?
Just going to update on the police car. I know, I don't know, but we got the new police cars everybody's aware of. But we had hoped to extend that police car into the summer, but the engine went on it. It was up, so the engine went on it. We had hoped to get a few more months, stretch a few more months out of it, you know.
Brian, what happened to the engine? Does anybody?
I have no idea. No idea, but just $20,000 we were told to repair it. But it was paid for at the time. It was done. But I said, like, we had hoped to extend it a little longer and save a few dollars, but unfortunately, it didn't last. It's a Dodge.
Any questions on the report? I just want to thank Constable Morales. She attended the Violence Against Women ceremony at Northumberland High School and also ran the Ugly Sweater Run in full uniform at the County Wellness Centers. We always appreciate our community policing, so thank you, Constable Morales, for that.
Move to accept the report.
I got a question,
Can you second that, please?
Chairman. Yes, a second.
On the question?
On the question, Brian. What is STEP? On the reports.
Strategic Traffic Enforcement Program.
It's a program that they look at the high and the areas that they're most troublesome in the town, and they target them. And the areas that aren't as busy, I guess you could say, they just don't. They're not as patrolling. For example, if we got a stop sign or a street like up by your way there, McGregor, they would spend more time there probably than they would spend down on Ford or some other street that they don't have as many problems, we'll say.
Thank you.
But thank you, Mayor. You had me stumped there for a minute.
So moved by Councillor Knight, second by Councillor Pence. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, most carried unanimously. Thank you. 5B is Fire Chief Michael Sullivan, of the Fire Department. The report's included.
Yeah, I don't know if people are aware of it, but Mike is engaged to be married. He said after 16 years, he said three times the charm. So I'd like to wish him all the best. I move to accept the fire chief's report.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Knight, second by Councillor Pence. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, most carried unanimously. Just want to thank the fire department for their participation in some iconic Stellarton events, which is the tree lighting and the Santa run. They're both very well received by residents and always looked forward to, so thank you for the fire department for their participation and their help in that. We appreciate it. And we also appreciate them holding a joint Christmas party with us in December with the town staff, so it's all good. We'll move on to 5C, Paige Draper, Marketing Communications. Any questions on that report?
I so move.
Second that.
Moved by Councillor Lewan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Campbell. There's no further questions. All those in favor by saying aye. Contrary minded, most carried unanimously. Thank you. And 5D, Blaine Murray, Town Engineer. Both reports are included, engineering as well as water. Is there any questions or comments?
No, I so moved on the question. Is there a second first, I guess? I moved.
I'll second it.
Thank
So
you.
moved by Councillor Lewan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Campbell. Is there any questions?
On the question, so Claremont, we won't be able to do the sidewalks until the spring. All residents have been notified. It's a very unfortunate event, and just as an FYI to the public, there has been talks within the council through email that we shouldn't, hopefully, don't get into that same situation in the future by leaving it too late to do a project like we did. That was through email, not in a council meeting, so I just want to bring that up so that they understand that it wasn't an ideal situation, but the alternative was not to do it at all. So we had to do it. Sorry, go ahead.
In all fairness, the town, we did apply in time.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing was, as you know, there was two streets involved, Kirk and Claremont, and the problem was it came back, we didn't get them, or the cost went up higher than we anticipated, so then we had to go back to the government and reapply. If we had to wait until next year, the cost could have went up again, and we would have been in a worse predicament. So we did the best we could, and I think a few months of inconvenience is,
It's unavoidable. Thank you. The other thing that I would like just to ask is about the clearing off of the big logs. We talked about once the land gets frozen, and it's starting a little bit, still not there yet, so I'm hoping the next month or so we will start with the work. Okay, so that's just an FYI to the public as well, that the ground is still a little bit too soft for us to go in, and we'll be doing so in the next month or so. Thank you.
Thank you for those points of clarification, Councillor Lewan. We appreciate it. And with that, if there's no further questions, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, most carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6, correspondence. 6A is the Bantam Memorial Tournament.
This is something that council has supported in the past. It's the 38th annual Pictou County Bantam Memorial Tournament. In the past, under the annual grants program, you have donated $50.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Pence, second by Councillor Lewan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, most carried unanimously. Thank you. 5B, NRHS.
Yes, this is a new request. They've never requested a donation for their musical, so
Do we have any money in the account?
there is still some funds left under the annual grants.
I move that we give them $100.
I'll second that motion.
Moved by Councillor Pence, seconded by Councillor Knight. All those in favor signify by
On
saying
the, on the
aye.
question.
Oh, on the question, sorry.
So we have a policy in place that we have yet to abide by. Last time we talked about it was anybody that have had a request approved in the past that we will approve, which we just did for the Band Memorial. NRHS is a new request. My feeling on it is that they need to abide by the policy as we all have agreed on. I don't know why we do policies if we keep on breaking them. Thank you.
Councillor Lewan, this is the first time I think they put this musical on, so I think when Susan writes the check out to them, she will make them aware that we do have a policy in place. And I thought when we did discuss our policy that this is what we were going to do, and next year.
For next year.
For next year.
Okay, is there any further comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded. So 1 nay, it was Councillor Lalonde. Motion carried. Thank you. Item C is PVSC.
Yes, so just wanted to let the residents know that of course, I just got a thing in my throat now. The 2024 property assessment notices were sent today, so they should be expecting those if they haven't received it already. So if there are any issues or concerns with the assessment values, that they are to contact PVSC directly, as they're the ones that determine the assessment values. All of the notifications for the residents will be also posted online as well. So that's just for council's information.
There's a phone number there, Susan.
Yes, there is. 1-800-380-7775 if they have any issues. They do have 14 days to appeal their assessment.
Thank you.
Thank
What's
you.
the percentage increase? Do we know yet?
You know what, usually they call in the fall to kind of give us an indication, and I haven't had an opportunity to, because we just got the information ourselves, so I haven't had the opportunity to look through it yet. But it has gone up, as they always do.
Committee of the Whole report, item 7, there's no report to be had.
No, we did not meet
meeting
in December.
because of Christmas. So we'll move on to item 8, which I'm in a conflict on, so I'll step out. We'll ask Deputy Mayor Campbell to please take
The old pro.
chair.
Don't throw any eggs.
So Deputy Mayor, there was a public hearing held today at 5 o'clock where council heard from the public. And so what I'm requesting to do is I will read the motion for each property. In order for council to discuss it, it has to be moved and seconded. So I will read the motion as it reads, and if it's to move. Be it resolved that Stellarton Town Council has considered the application for a development agreement with Jesco Holdings to develop an additional 2 residential units on the main level of the commercial building at 274 Ford Street and grants its second and final reading as required under the Municipal Government Act of Nova Scotia. This public hearing was held on January 8th at 5 p.m. at the Stellarton Town Council, where they considered comments, objections, and submissions, and the public hearing was advertised in the Advocate on December 20th and 27th. So that's the first one.
I move to make a motion that we allow 274 Ford Street to make these lower areas into an apartments, and I have something here, of course.
we just need a
wait
seconder
a
first.
question, yeah. I'll second the motion. So read that now, wait for the second one.
We can do the second one as well.
Okay.
And then you can discuss them at the same time. Be it resolved that Stellarton Town Council has considered the application for a development agreement with McGillivray Properties Limited to develop an additional 8 residential units on the main level of the commercial building at 283 Ford Street and grants its second and final reading as required under the Municipal Government Act of Nova Scotia. Be it further resolved that a public hearing was held at 5 p.m. Monday, January 8th at the Stellarton Town Council, where they considered comments, objections, and submissions, where it was advertised in the Advocate on December 20th and 27th.
I move.
I second that motion. Now,
comments.
Now, can I comment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I taken down a few comments. I heard what Councillor Wan had to say. The Planning and Advisory Committee couldn't make a decision on what to do with these two properties. A decision of this importance requires research. I felt I didn't have enough information. The big question, is it feasible to maintain a 100% commercial base on Ford Street, or is housing a priority? The time taken to research allowed me an opportunity to understand the dilemma and ask questions, put together stats, and I was able to come to a conclusion. Bylaws are important. Bylaws have to be enforced. Bylaws need to be reasonable. They should not discourage development. They have to apply equally to everyone. Bylaws need to be revisited, if only to establish their need in today's world. Does past practice apply to today's market? Council has to take into account the needs of today's municipalities. This bylaw is a classic example of one that needs to be restructured. The original intent probably made sense. The question is it prevalent to today's market? Ford Street was once the commercial hub of Stellarton. It hosted the shopping needs for residents. Private transport held a captivated clientele. You shopped at the transit routes, dropped you off in New Glasgow or Main Street, Stellarton. They kept the supply chain close to the kitchen. Shopping in Truro, Costco, Gateway, etc., was not feasible. The Asphalt hosted 6 stores, 3 in Bunker Hill, 2 on Pleasant Street, and 2 on East Acadia. On South Street, there was 1 on South Ford, 2 in Middle Ford, and there's possibly more, but that's all that I'm aware of. Milk was delivered to the home. Groceries, home delivered. Sobeys delivered to the homes, to your doorstep. First by horse and then by wagon. Horse and wagon rather, and then by auto. Sobeys mom and pop shop went the way of the box stores, developing into the second largest grocery chain in Canada. What's the old saying? Diverse or die. If it were not for family loyalty to Stellarton, would Sobeys still be on the main street in Ford Street? Where would Sobeys be if they didn't adapt to a changing market? Even the children's Christmas gifts were obtained locally at in the Sears Wish Book. This culture changed when auto became affordable. Highways made distance shopping obtainable. 45 minutes to Truro, 30 minutes to Antigonish, an hour and a half to Halifax, 5 minutes to New Glasgow. The induction of the big box stores, or one-stop shopping, Zellers, Woolworths, Canadian Tire, Metropolitan, Radio Shack, Kent, Kmart, Proudfoot, Sobeys, specialty stores, moved from the main streets of New Glasgow and Stellarton into the shopping malls. Actually, Sobeys' home store, whose family loyalty remained here locally. I do believe they built the first mall. I do believe Sobeys built the first mall. Another competing factor is the Albion Centre. Councillors understood if they wanted to grab a piece of the market, change was evident. Stellarton needed to follow suit like Truro, Amherst, Halifax, Sydney, New Glasgow, etc. Accessibility to the highway was essential to compete in today's market. Think about it. If that area was available first, the malls could be in Stellarton. Buildings on Ford Street that burnt down, they weren't replaced. The owners had no appetite to replace them. Why? From the roundabout to the tracks on South Ford Street, we have 52 residential housing, 28 commercial businesses, 2 banks, 6 restaurants, 3 pharmacies, post office, 2 car dealerships, liquor store, Tax 2000, totaling 16 establishments. 6 of the 28 are located in the Albion Centre area. down in North Ford. Sam's wanted to buy the Keith Lodge, Masonic Lodge. They were going to tear it down and make more parking for their businesses. With plans to Sam's are now taking down the building next to it, next to Tax 2000. Why? On the other hand, we have 36 businesses in the industrial park and Albion Center parks. And I don't need to say everybody's aware of what's happening in that park here in council. We have made a conscious decision to develop the Albion Center. Wouldn't it be foolish to assume that we can compete? We need to focus on priorities. Yes, others might follow suit. Not sure how many are left. A number have already been converted to apartments. What's the plan there? The card shop and the tobacco shop have been empty for years. What are the plans to enforce the bylaw on these businesses that have been made into apartments? That could be a can of worms. McGilvery has demonstrated that he is willing to build quality structures while assisting in the housing crisis. Frank Sobey, the man who was a major developer in Stellarton, tell him he couldn't develop the Heights or Valley Woods. The Thompson Sutherland building was empty for many years until developer Jamie McGilvery took it on. The biggest national crisis next to inflation is housing shortage. I hope Jamie is the next Frank Sobey and our other gentleman sitting next to him. That's how I feel, and I feel very strongly that in that area that I don't see an issue with turning those bottom units into apartments.
Thank you, Councillor Knight. That was very well researched. The only thing I would say is that the Planning Advisory Committee, even though it didn't have a unanimous vote, it did reach a vote. That's the only thing I would add to that. I appreciate your research, though. It was very well done. At the end of the day, I just want to remind Council that we had an inquiry about an apartment building in the Albion Business Park that we said no to, where we said that we would rather have commercial on the bottom, residential on the top. If we were to agree right now that we say yes to 274 and 283 4th Street, what leg do we have to stand on when we say no to other individuals in other areas? All I'm looking for is consistency and fairness. I understand that there's a crisis right now. I understand that there's a need and there's a demand. And my preference would be a 15, 20 years contract instead of being permanent. That would be it. Thank you.
Well, first off, we have apples and oranges there. Ford Street and the industrial park are two different areas totally. Ford Street is not by the Trans-Canada. Ford Street doesn't have the facilities, the accessibility. And the other thing to remember, to take into consideration, going back a number of years, and not that far back, the Trans-Canada didn't run through that area. So when people drove through towns, they had to go through New Glasgow, they had to go through the main streets in Stellarton. That's not the case now. If you sit and if you walk up and down Ford Street, how many people you see standing there? They're either in the post office, the best place to find them, talking to their friends or catching up on the news. But you're parking in Ford. That's the biggest defer in people buying there. You might get somebody to go in and put in a hairdressing shop or whatever have you, but just look at it. People are moving out of Ford Street. People are moving from New Glasgow. The buildings that are burnt down and torn down are not being rebuilt. The town that I came from, in Cape Breton, from one end of it to the other is desolate. Every store that was in there is gone. So Like I said, it's apples and oranges.
Call for the question.
No, Roland wanted to speak.
I'm not getting into the debate, obviously. I just want to make a point of clarification between the downtown and the business park. They're two different zones. The C1 zone exists under the land use bylaw for the downtown area on Ford Street, which is the downtown core zone. And we have a business park commercial zone C4 in the business park. So they are slightly different, but somebody can put in, as of right, residential uses in a commercial building in both of those zones. Okay, so in the C4 zone in the business park, it can be done as of right. If somebody wanted to put in strictly a residential building in the business park in the C4 zone, they would also have to go through a development agreement process. I just want to point that out for clarification. That's all.
I know that.
That's not very different from what I said, Roland, though.
But in that situation, you're not setting a precedent because it's a different zone.
Understood, it's a different zone, but nevertheless, both of them are used for commercial properties. Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary?
Nay.
Motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 9, appointment of temporary building fire inspector.
Yes, so I need council's approval to appoint a temporary building and fire inspector. Our current one, Manny Withrow, is going to be away for 6 weeks. So he has recommended Avery Withrow, who has his level 2 certification. And so I recommend that council approve his temporary appointment.
I second.
It's nice to see that we have a backup because they're hard to come by.
Moved by Councillor Pence, seconded by Councillor Wand. If there's no further comments or questions, all those in favor, by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded. Most carried unanimously. Thank you. Open forums next. Anyone would like to speak? Hearing no one. Next council meeting is Monday, February 12th, 2024, 5:30 p.m. here at the council chambers.
Aye.